Right, welcome back to the channel, and today is a really exciting day in the future of VUDU Performance. Hopefully over my right shoulder you can see our new Golf R MK8, which we've had on order for about 6 months and it's finally arrived. This is the start of something very special. Obviously we do tons and tons of software for Volkswagen Audi Group already, as well as BMW and Ford, but we felt now was the time to plunge in feet first and develop a really well engineered equivalent of what we do for our Ford market, VUDU hardware range for all Volkswagen Audi Group. So we're currently on with that with a 7.5 that we've got in our design facility right now. There are some rendered images floating around of some bits and pieces that we've been working on. There's a little bit of information kicking about, but we're trying to keep it until we're entirely happy before we release to public. So naturally we needed the MK8 platform to be able to see what the transfer across is. So ultimately we hope within the next 6 months to have a full hardware and full software range for this vehicle behind me that's exactly what you would expect from VUDU. So as you can see, we've now got the bonnet up. We felt a good opportunity to go through some of the engine specs, so hopefully we can drag Will over a little bit. Sorry about the wind and the sun, and it's not exactly ideal filming time. Looks a little bit bland if I'm honest with you. Straight away just looking in we can see some nice little options for modifications for some nice engine bay dress up stuff, but more than anything I don't like these at all. But you know, whether or not we design a nicer engine cover seems a little bit not so much a tuner thing to do, but an aesthetics thing. But ultimately what we've got here is the EA888 engine that was found in the previous generation Golf R, and just behind that there, where you'll see that bolted on, we have a slightly different turbocharger. It's actually a Continental turbo, so there are going to be some minor changes to some of the induction kit side, your turbo elbows and bits and pieces like that. So they've given us a little bit of something new to work with, but hopefully it looks like everything's a little bit shorter as well, so we may struggle to cross-platform this, but we'll see what we can do. Hopefully we can, because that makes it better. If from a manufacturer's point of view we can make bigger batches. So we've got as part of this package using I believe it's a slightly bigger turbo, but the previous generation Mark 7.5 and Mark 7 Golf R were quoted as a 300 horsepower model, and then I think the Mark 7.5 was 310. They're saying this does 316 horsepower, but of course we're going to find that out when we get to the dyno, which I'm hoping we might be able to do tomorrow if we've not got too much workshop work on. I'm not sure whether they've changed anything internally in the engine. Obviously until people start stripping them down, going to build them, will we see anything slightly different, but ultimately as far as I'm aware it's a Crate EA888 engine. So now we've seen under the engine bay, let's shut this down and go and see the bit that I'm really excited about, which is inside. They have made huge steps forward in terms of technology and information inside, and then I'm looking forward to having a go at doing some launches and stuff. We're going to do a little video of how to get it into launch control, because we couldn't do that yesterday. It took us a little bit of working out, and there's about 10 million buttons that you've got to press before you get to traction control off so that you can do a full launch. So yeah, let's get this bonnet shut down and we'll go inside and have a little look around. So inside the car, this is one of the bits that I'm most excited about, having had a previous generation Golf, and we've been using a 7.5 of a really good customer of ours to develop the hardware on. And whilst the 7.5 is quite a big step up from a Mark 7, this has just blown everything out the park. So the seats, as you can see here, are more like a true bucket seat. On pictures, I actually looked and thought, I really don't think I'm keen on the blue check and the blue R and stuff, but once you're inside, it actually looks really smart. It's like a suede material here. It's quite a hard wearing material, but more importantly, when you sat in the car, you really sat in the seat and it feels like a glove round you. So from my experience of doing a little bit of circuit racing and stuff, one of the things that I would say that I hate about road cars is, certainly if you go to do a track day, is when you start pushing on a little bit, you're moving around in the seat, and if you're trying to organise yourself in the seat all the time, you're not concentrating on balancing the car. So as soon as I sat in this, I thought this is a refreshing change, and this is somewhere where I believe, which we are definitely going to do some track work with this car as we're developing products and software, so I'm massively impressed with that. So I'm going to touch on these buttons here, which are on the steering wheel. First of all, they look really, really classy, but it's difficult to show, but we'll try and do it. The volume buttons, for example, you don't actually have to press them, you can do, but you can slide up and down, it's like a touch screen, so that's really nice. And then the R button here, obviously you can change your race mode, individual, and it changes all your dash and clocks and whatnot, which is, again, looks really, really cool. I've got mine set on a particular one that I like, so it gives me a big a lot of view, or a big dash, so I can see what I'm looking at that's important to me, so I don't care whether my heated seats are on and stuff like that. When I'm on it, I want to be able to see revs, speed, so as you can see what corner entries and stuff like that, certainly on the track, not necessarily on the road. Lane assist, you can see that that's on. I have the heated steering wheel, which is lovely. From standard, I think this is a bone stock version, you know, I've not added anything to it, so it comes as stock. The paddles on this one are slightly bigger. When I watched other videos, I assumed, looking at it, that they were billet aluminium with like a dark anthracite anodizing on them, but it's not. By the look of it, it is actually plastic. They're just extended, so they're going to be going definitely in favour of a VUDU product. So moving on to the infotainment screen, or whatever you call it. Again, I'm not a huge boffin on all these sort of things, but what I can tell you briefly, without going into it too in depth, because you could do a whole video around this, it's essentially like having an iPad built into the dashboard of the vehicle. It's superb. It's got Apple CarPlay, you can pick all the different backgrounds, you can have several different users, so my user profile has then got individual settings for the exhaust and race mode and all this sort of stuff. You can pick, when you turn the car on, do you want the wheel to come on, you know, your heated wheel to come on number 1, 2 or 3. You can do the same with your seats. It brings a certain song on for you. It's fantastic, but very complex. One cool feature that I found last night when we were just messing around out for a drive is this here, which is the drop that in there and you've got wireless charging. So, and that is, for me, I am constantly on my phone, people ringing me, chasing me for files, asking about products, whatever. My phone does not last a day, so to have that there when I'm out on the road is superb. So that's a really good thing. There's some slight changes down here where the gear stick or selector would usually be. That's now a tiny little nub, as I would call it, and you've got your park button and stuff like that, rather than it all being on the old stick. So yeah, I mean, don't want to go too in depth on the inside because this is not really a review video. It's more just touching on what's here, and you know what we want to do as a tuner. But Will has Will has asked me to mention 3 points about the car that I really like and on the inside, and 3 points that I don't like. So 3 points that I really like is, I like the screen here where I can change it to be able to show me what I want to see, whether I'm just driving down the road, whether I'm on the track, whatever. I particularly like the new design of the where some of this lighting stuff is here on the right hand side, and I really like the sort of iPad built-in infotainment, whatever you want to call it, and some of the stuff that you can set up that comes automatically on. Things that I don't like, the paddles, they look really good in videos, but yes, they are plastic and I'm not a great fan of those, but I'm going to change them anyway. The buttons, it's a bit of a love-hate really. I love the fact that they're there and how they work, but I hate the fact that when you're pushing on, particularly on tight corners and stuff, you can catch them with the palms of your hand and flick it into different modes or flick your wheel on and off, so that really annoys me, although maybe I'll get used to it. And then finally this little nub down here that is a selector stick. You know, I don't know what was wrong with the old one, they could probably just restyled it, but now you find yourself, you're not too sure how to grab it, so to speak. It's just a bit, yeah, it's not for me in that. So probably 3 things that I really don't like. So what we're going to do now is jump out, go around some of the cool stuff on the chassis and the outside, because I don't know if anybody's seen already, but they've gone massive on the brake discs on these, and they do feel awesome. That's one thing I want to touch on. So we'll run around the outside, do some cool cinematics, talk about a little bit of the chassis developments that they've done, and then we can get onto the fun stuff of doing some launches and a little bit of driving. So I'm sure Will's going to really enjoy being a passenger in that. So now that we've seen the interior of this car, I wanted to come outside and have a look at some of the exterior changes that VW have made. The first noticeable thing is the size of the front discs. They are enormous compared to a Mark 7 or a Mark 7.5. A bit strange they still haven't gone to a sort of motorsport based caliper, i.e. a 4-pot, 6-pot, whatever, but on the whole that caliper does look enormous, and it's the first thing that people notice on the car, especially because ours is white, I think, so it really stands out, the blue caliper. We've not opted for the 19-inch upgraded wheels that come as part of the Club Sport pack because we were going to do our own wheels, so there's no point. These will be coming straight off. I might just use them as like a track day wheel or something like that. The lights are completely different. They're an IQ light which moves when you turn the wheel, so again the spec is really high on this to say it's a base car, and it's really impressive what it's got. So if you are going to opt for the Club Sport, that gives you some drift mode, Nürburgring edition, a nice spoiler on the back and bits and pieces, but of course we want to make all our own bits for it, so we're going to make his own splitter kit, spoiler, wheels are on order, they'll be here this week, next week. And then we're going to probably we've kept the branding quite clean on it at the moment. I might put a little bit more on but not go mental. But yeah, we're going to jump inside now. I'm going to take Will with me so that we can get some reaction videos, see what it's like driving it around on the road. So we'll jump in on that one. So we've come out in the car now. Typically it's decided to hoof it down. I brought Will with me, you never really speak much, so I don't know if you're much of a passenger really. Usually if I've got my foot down you go a little bit quiet.
Oh yeah, it's for the enjoyment I suppose.
Yeah, and that. But so we wanted to get a bit of an idea of what it feels like to drive, what I think, my perspective of how the balance of the car is and whether it can be improved with some products that we hope to make for it. First impressions when I got in it was like how much of a jump forward it is internally than a Mark 7 Golf that I had before. I know the 7.5's got the fancy dash and stuff, but it ain't got all this. But yeah, it's really positive the way the steering is, and I set this up, you can pick how heavy the steering is in individual mode and then how you want the throttle to react, and there's quite a lot of changes you can make that I think personally make a massive difference to it. But yeah, one thing that I've noticed with this is, you know, if you put it in normal drive mode and not noisy mode and all the rest of it, which is what I like to drive in, it's really supple, it's really comfortable. It's far more comfortable than, you know, these seats are far more comfortable and really hold you in than the previous Mark 7 that I had. Should we get some beans over here? See, I've come up this road in the Fiesta just the other day and it bounces you all over, whereas this thing, it just rides over so much better. It is really, really good over these sort of back roads like that, you know, and that's not, you know, we're not pushing on really, we're just a bit steady.
Just floats, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So the chassis is really good. I think the only thing is, from looking at it from the outside, the car could do with some spacers, which I'm going to make some spaces obviously, and a set of lowering springs, but I'm not going to go mad with, there's another one there, how strange is that? Was that a GTI or a
GTD?
Oh, GTD. Yeah. They all do look pretty similar. That's another thing I've noticed, is they've all looked fairly similar, unless you get the Club Sport pack, which on this gives you something I should touch on really. It gives you drift mode, and I was sort of like, and a spoiler and stuff, and I was like, oh, do I want to spend, I'm sure it was £3 or something ridiculous to have this Club Sport pack. I mean, don't hold me to that because I've not really done that much research on it, but I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to make all of it, surely I want to make you know, my own spoiler, which I'd like to do like we do with the splitter kits and stuff. But then also, I'm pretty confident that it's purely going to be software upgrade to be able to enable the drift mode, because it's just a Haldex. I presume it disconnects the front Haldex and just runs it rear wheel drive.
Yeah.
So I want to work out how to do that, so anybody else who buys one of these or gets one on a cheap lease deal or whatever that doesn't opt for the Club Sport pack can actually purchase, you know, as part of our map or whatever, the optional, because the buttons are all there, so I'm confident it's just going to be a case of programming a button in and then you should have it. You know, I can't see it being that complicated. You know, they're not going to make it that difficult. Don't have to, it feels almost like a stage 1 Mark 7, and the grip is just unbelievable. I hope you can see steering wheel, because it's like you put it, I'm not having to put opposite locking, but you're balancing it a bit, which is, it's nice. It feels really engaging. But as I say, like, I did have a bit of a gripe with 4-wheel drive on my old Mark 7, because it sort of just felt a bit like playing a PlayStation game. But this, it's as if they've put in a little bit of a different chassis dynamic into it to give it, that's a really bad bum there, to give it a little bit more playfulness. So when you're tipping it into corners and you're just giving it a bit of stick, it does allow you to get a little wiggle on. I'm now going to select the million buttons, which we'll show you shortly, to put it into. So there's no, in fact we could do launch here, couldn't we, to be fair? Should we do that as well?
That's what you're doing.
No, I was going to just give you a scare over the top of the, because this road's actually closed, so we've got a road closed, so let's see if we can try a little, we want all this off, don't we?
Yeah, I mean,
Confirm. I'm going to do it in sport, I think, so let's go for a little launch first.
Takes my breath.
Now we'll have some,
what's going to happen and then just whoosh.
So we'll try some spirited driving on this closed road with the traction off. They're just so good for a purposeful car, these. It's ridiculous. What I can't get over is how you put your foot down, and like obviously when you're doing this in a Fiesta, for example, or a Focus or a Golf GTI, he's wanting to pick the wheels up all the time, and you've got to be so progressive on the throttle. Whereas this, you pin the throttle, you feel it sit down, and it digs whichever. If you've got a bit of right hand down, so you've got load across that side, when you sit it down, it loads up on the back right and just pins you out the corners, and it's unbelievable. Like, I would highly recommend anybody who's considering, you know, because we all know when you spec one of these up to like 50 grand, it's a ridiculous amount of money for a Golf. And I'm not saying that you should do that, but as an overall daily car that's capable of this, if you can pick one up with a reasonable spec for, you know, good monthly payments or whatever, and I would highly recommend it. And I think once we start tuning, well, it's just going to be on another level. I really don't think there's going to be much that can touch it unless you're going into 5-cylinder territory, you know. And certainly, even the 5-cylinder, you know, the RS3, TTRS, they're a lovely car, but they're nowhere near as nice as inside as what this is. It's absolutely astonishing.
I mean, this is a stock model and it's just kitted out, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got, yeah, this is Bones completely base model. Like we've not spec'd anything. I just rang up and ordered one, you know, and because we were going to be using it for pulling in bits and making parts and whatnot, and so there's no point me having all the fancy spec. It's a work mule at the end of the day. But even with this, you know, to have heated seats and folding mirrors and all that sort of stuff, it's really good. Yeah, heated steering wheel. Like I say, it's definitely surprised me. I wasn't expecting this much. That's crazy, isn't it?
It just goes, and it's mental that this is the stock level.
Yeah, I love it.
And
Love it.
And it's just flying.
Well, look, I think that's about it, really, isn't it? For video-wise, I don't think we can say we've waffled on enough. You know, let's hope that people like listening to me talk absolute garbage, because I'm just that excited about it. I've done it for like 20 minutes, so you know, we'll sign it off at that. Please, you know,
Subscribe.
Spit that out. Subscribe to the channel. You know, follow us, because I am personally very excited about this car, which means there's going to be loads of videos. Will's going to do loads of videos when I'm not around, if I'm busy off doing whatever, meetings and racing, what have you. You know, this is going to be a big part of the future of what we do as VUDU Performance and to support our dealers. So next week we're potentially going over to CLSG, so we'll try and get some of that. We're going to be seeing some other some of our suppliers which want to do things on the car for us. So yeah, it's going to be really exciting, and we'll take everybody on a journey with us, hopefully.
Oh, yeah.